Hello, in this video I'd like to review the 1040A that I asked you to complete on day 13. Called this scenario number 5. We're going a little bit out of order, but it's still a good one to look at right now. We've got a couple, Pat and Rosa, that are married and they have 3 children. Rosa works as a seamstress. Here's her W-2. As a seamstress, she made $48,000 last year, and the federal government collected $9,000 in taxes. Pat is a salesman, so in Pat's job, he made $48,000 last year and paid $10,000 in federal taxes. And since they are married with children, they can't complete a 1040EZ form, but they can complete a 1040A. Pat and Rosa received some money on account of having an interest-bearing account with the bank, so they made $900 in interest last year, so we've got to report that, and $230 in stock dividends, so we have to report that as income as well. Now, hopefully you took the time to complete this worksheet, complete this form as the instructions on Schoology specified. If you haven't already completed this form on your own, please stop the video now and go back and fill out the tax form 1040A on your own. And once that's finished, then come back to this video, resume playback to check your work. Okay, so if you had the 1040A complete, it should look something like this. In the top section for personal information, we have Patrick NVIDIA and Rosa NVIDIA. Their names are reported here as they were recorded on the W-2. Same thing with their address. This is the street and city in which they live, and the social security numbers provided to them on the W-2s. And if we look closely here, there's Patrick's information, his name and address. Here is Rosa's name and address. And we've got Rosa's social security number, Patrick's social security number. So all of that information that we're reporting in the top section for personal information came straight from the W-2s. Moving on, for filing status, the instructions did specify that this is a couple that's married filing their taxes jointly. And as we discussed in the past, if you are living on your own and providing for yourself with the 1040A form, you do check these boxes. It's different than the EZ form. So you are solo, you are on your own, you do check the boxes. So we're going to check those because we are going to claim them as exemptions, we call that. There was no mention of the names of the 3 children, so I just named them Kid 1, Kid 2, Kid 3 NVIDIA. I made up social security numbers for each, and I specified that each are children relative or related to the couple. Now, the last time that I taught this section on taxes, we did go out and work on the child tax credit, and so we placed the check marks here. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but if you'd like to check these boxes, you're welcome to do so. These children do qualify for the child tax credit. With that being said, I'm not going to cover that worksheet in this video, but if you'd like to give it a try on your own, you're welcome to do so. Now, anyway, with the rest of the exemptions identified, we had 2 for ourselves, 3 for the children, none in these 2 groups, for a grand total of 5. That's going to play into a big deduction when we get to our taxes on the back side of the form. Now, with regards to wages and other incomes, $96,000 was the total for line 1 in each of those W-2s. They earned $987 in taxable interest from the bank and $230 from stock dividends. We called those ordinary dividends. No other income applies to this couple. They didn't sell something and make a lot of money. That's what capital gains is. They didn't receive any money from an IRA or retirement account. They didn't receive anything from their pensions or annuities, which is another form of a retirement account, so there's no mention of that. They didn't receive any money from Social Security, which in a sense is a retirement account. They all had jobs, or the couple had jobs, so they were not collecting money from unemployment, and they did not live in Alaska, so they were not entitled to this permanent fund dividend. So we ended up using lots of zeros down this right-hand column, which is perfectly fine. That makes our math a little bit easier. We only had to add those three numbers together, and they've got a total income of $97,000. At this point, we would try to adjust our gross income, but again, nothing really applies. Neither one of them were educators, so they couldn't take that deduction. Neither one paid student loans or into IRAs and received any qualified deductions. Neither had tuitions or fees to pay to a school. And so because of that, no adjustments were made on this front side. We simply reported the number from line 15 back down on line 21. Now we use that number to kickstart line 22. So we've copied that number to the second page. There was no information to report in line 23, so we leave that as a 0. But in line 24, the instructions say to enter your standard deduction. Well, line 24, standard deduction for a married couple filing jointly. The deduction is $12,600. So we got to write the number $12,600 here. And line 25 said to subtract these two. $97,000 minus $12,000. That drops us down to $84,000 in income. So that's a pretty good sign. Now, beyond that, however, recall that the exemptions that we reported on the front page, that's going to save us a bunch of money too. The number on the front was 5. We had 5 exemptions. And that's what we reported here in line 6D, the total number of exemptions claimed. And so look at what the instructions tell us to do. Multiply $4,050 by the number on line 6D. Well, $4,050 times the number 5 gives us $20,250 in deductions. Now, when we subtract this number from this number where we were in the last step, we now land on a relatively small value, $64,519. So even though Pat and Rosa earned $97,000 last year, in the eyes of the government, they should only be taxed on $64,000 of it. So basically, they're paying taxes on $64,000, and $33,000 that they earned was done so tax-free. The tax that they owe, step 28, if you recall, you had to go out to the tax table. So the tax table for a couple that's married and filing jointly that earned $64,000, the $64,000 table, between $500 and $550, told us that the taxes due for that couple is $8,751. There were no carryovers or adjustments in tax burden from last year, so we're reporting 0 in line 29. The amount of taxes that we owe, or that this couple owes, is $87.51. Now they're fairly excited at this point. I don't know if you can tell exactly why, but because they were excited, they didn't bother to mess with these credits. They just didn't want to take the time to complete the worksheet, and so they moved on. They entered a bunch of zeros for those values. In line 36, the sum total of these credits was 0, which again is perfectly fine because if you can see in the next step or two, take a look at this. The total amount of taxes that they owe is $8,751. They had health care, so no tax burden there. Again, $8,751 is owed to the federal government. Go look at those W-2s now. Between Pat and Rosa, when you add together their W-2s, let me jump out here. Pat paid $10,000 in taxes. Rosa paid $9,000 in taxes. They paid $19,000 or so in taxes already. That's how much money was withheld from their paychecks throughout the year. Well, incredibly, they paid $19,000, but in the eyes of the government, they only owed $8,751. So you can tell now, hopefully, that or why they were so excited about this, because again, ignoring the earned income credit, which they wouldn't have qualified anyway, ignoring the child tax credit, the American Opportunity Credit, this premium, ignoring all of these, not even bothering to try to take those tax credits. They've paid $19,000, and when that subtracts $8,751, they are entitled to a $10,958 refund check from the federal government. That's amazing. They way overpaid on their taxes. They're going to get a huge tax return. And again, you can tell there's really no need for them to complete these other tax credits. They don't need to spend any time working on these additional worksheets for lines 31 to 35 or even from 41 to 45. Sure, that would have increased their refund, but they're already getting almost $11,000 back. So that's a good enough reason not to complete those other forms. Now we can stop here, and you can submit this this worksheet based on all the information that was provided in the video. However, I do want you to consider this challenge, if you will. What if they spent $168 per week for 50 weeks throughout the year for each of their kids to go to daycare? So they had 3 kids. Each one had to pay $168 per week, and they do so for 50 weeks per year. Imagine their bill, how much money they spent on daycare, and use that number in the form 2441. Just like we did with the Omars yesterday. For a challenge, go ahead and complete the form 2441 and use that to modify this tax return. Essentially, you are going to come up with a number that gets to be placed here. Where did it go? Right here, line 31. They should have received a tax credit because they spent money on daycare. So I'm curious, how much money does that turn into? How does that affect their return? And if it were you, would you go ahead and file that refund with that additional form? Is it worth the effort to complete the other tax form and submit it? So that's all for this video. Hopefully you were able to complete this assignment correctly the first time, and if not, then the quick explanation here should have helped you out. Please let us know if you have other questions, and feel free to talk to one another while you complete your work. Thanks.